under the following property being rezoned. Shady 40 land out of Robinson, yeah, survey, and it's 531 and a half abstract 86 located along FM 2790 East being rezoned from an R1 to a B2 for the purpose of developing multiple commercial pads along FM 2790 East with a 99 lot duplex development. The rest of said property would be used for single-family residential homes. Current owners of said property is Five Rivers Real Estate. Public hearing meeting is open to the public. And is there anybody here to address?
Pretty much the way it was in the public hearing for this zoning case.
Okay, so we can go ahead and show us at 6:34. For us to go ahead and close that. And let's go ahead and proceed. Go ahead and show back. 6:34. Go back into the council meeting. Okay, last call. I'll go ahead and ask, any citizen comments? Citizens, anything? All right. I don't see, okay, I don't think we have additional comments. So let's go ahead and jump right into our action item. Action item 4. 4A, consider and act upon an ordinance authorizing the insurance of the city's general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2022, levying an annual ad valorem tax within limitations prescribed by law for the payment of the bonds and resolving other matter incidents and related thereto. Andrew.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrew Friedman with Samco Capital Markets. Represent the city as financial advisor. In a month since we briefed you on the refunding opportunity, you gave us a green light to proceed and see if we could refinance this debt without extending its amortization and save a little bit of money for the outstanding bonds of the city, or COs, excuse me, and save a little bit on our debt service. I'm joined tonight by Lauren Ferrero. She represents the city as bond counsel, and so she's got the legal paperwork. Done a great job on helping kind of pull all of this together. I handed out a very brief summary of the refunding that we'll go over. The first page, we put this out for a competitive private placement bid to all of the banks locally and around the state and country that purchase municipal bonds to buy and to hold for the life of the bonds. One of the reasons for doing that, rather than going out and doing a traditional bond underwriting as we did with the 2013 COs that we're funding right now, is it's a small amount. There's less than $960,000 in those obligations outstanding. And so in an effort to save as much money as possible, keep costs as low as possible, we went the private placement route. We still go out competitively, meaning we invite everybody to submit their bids today at noon and award it to the low bidders. You can see we received 3 bids. The best bid came from Amegy Bank at an interest rate of 2.79%. We had other bids from Truist, which is the old BB&T, and then TIB, the independent bank. So what you can see from here, winning bid 2.79%. If we hadn't gotten their bid, the best bid would have been 2.99%. So that 20 basis points really helps the refund. Interest rates since January have gone up a full percent. So we're now, and I'm sure anybody reading the news, interest rates are going up. We've got inflation that continues to hammer away at the economy. The Federal Reserve has taken action and raised their federal funds rate, which is their base rate. And what that does is generally send interest rates higher. They also indicated last week when they did bump those interest rates that they may do so many more times in 2022 as they try to get a handle on inflation to bring that under control. So what that tells us is interest rates in the long term are likely going up. One of the things that we've seen in the last week is the yield curve has inverted, meaning that borrowing on short-term debt, a 5-year and 7-year treasury bond, that yield is actually higher, or it did briefly go higher than the 30-year bond. And so when you get that yield curve inverted like that, economists generally believe that's an indicator for a recession. So with the economy potentially headed into recession, and it doesn't mean that we're definitely headed into one, but kind of cautionary in terms of what we may expect. So interest rates have gone up. We enter a recession, interest rates are likely to come back down. But it's all the Federal Reserve and our government trying to get a handle on that inflation. Gas prices going up substantially, cost of food, labor, construction, et cetera. With all of that being said, 2.79% was a higher interest rate than what we had looked at a month ago. We were hoping that interest rates weren't going to go up quite as fast as they have been, but the refunding still works. So the second page behind here, this is look familiar from the refunding that I showed you a month ago. Same amount of bonds being called, $960,000. On a net present value basis, what we looked at on February 28th was potentially saving $65,794 over the life of this refinancing. Again, the original COs are scheduled to mature in 2033. These refunding bonds will also mature in 2033. So we're not extending the debt we have. We're just simply replacing a higher debt service payment with a slightly lower one. Net of all the costs of issuance, et cetera, we're looking with the final interest rate of 2.79% we received today. We'll save $63,556,000 between now and 2033. So you can see on that table on the right side that annual savings is between $7,000 and $5,000 a year over the next several years, cumulatively totaling $75,000, just over on a present value basis when you discount it back. Time value of money, that's $63,556. So we're happy to get the refunding done. In all honesty, as I was going to sleep last night, I didn't know if we were going to get bids that were competitive enough that we would want to proceed with and recommend this refunding. Very happy to report that we can. The other thing you'll notice, the tick of the true total interest cost, of the refunding bonds, we estimated at 2.25%. We're locking in rates at 2.79%. We're saving almost the same amount of money. Your consultants all collectively worked together, lowered our fees to help generate the same amount of savings, or roughly thereof, to get you all to the same position, so that we're coming in here with very bad news. So we're happy to do that, and happy to report that we're able to get this done very close to the levels that we had thought we might get back in February 28th. Briefed you all on the opportunity. So it's our recommendation for you all to approve and proceed with this. There's no downside to refinancing this, given the rate environment that we're in. We can take the bird in the hand versus waiting to see if interest rates were to somehow come down later in this year or sometime in the future. It makes sense to proceed with this. One thing that I do want to bring to you all's attention, and it's something that I know that the city kept a keen eye on, or it's made a priority. As we went out and solicited this opportunity to banks, they do their own due diligence. And so they want to see your financials and see how your performance has been over the years. And so one of the things that kept coming up was, where are their audits? Their audits are late. And so Lynette, city staff, did a great job of explaining, that here's our information. We did get the audits done. It's a priority to proceed with that. Last time we were talking about future capital improvement projects, all the need that we have from the utility side, the general fund side. It's going to be very, very important for the city to maintain that pace, get our audits done within 6 months at the end of our fiscal year each year, so that we can help get the lowest interest rate possible when we do go to borrow. As a bond investor looks, and when they see that we're not able to get our financials completed within 6 months of a fiscal year, it begs the question of, is this a community that I want to invest in? And so we want to always put our best foot forward. And certainly, I think it sounds like y'all have made great progress down that path. I just want to take this opportunity to highlight that for you all. We've got a great rate here. Did a great job of answering. Amegy Bank, who was the one asking all the questions, I was very relieved that they submitted such a competitive bid, because it did take a lot of work for your finance staff to compile answers that satisfy them. But when we go to borrow more money, if we're getting charged a higher interest rate because we don't have timely financials, it's just a higher cost of any projects that we're doing. So just leave that with you all. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, anything regarding the ordinance or wording that you see in there. Ms. Ferreira would be happy to answer, but turn it all over to you.
Any questions? Can I get a motion for us to go ahead and say?
Mayor, I move that we accept the bid from Energy Bank and adopt an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the city's general obligation refunding bonds, series 2022, excuse me. Levy an ad valorem tax within the limitations prescribed by law for the payment of bonds and resolve other matters incident and related to it.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Okay, any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you so much, and appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for all that time. Please pass our thanks to Mark too.
I will do so.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and continue on. B, consider and act upon the recommendation of the zoning committee on the rezoning of Vital Farms property. Come on up.
That B?
Did I miss that?
That is the
Oh, it is B, that's right, we moved it up.
Good evening,
Yeah.
Mayor, Council, Emily Weisler, Rick Griffin, and Fairman, on behalf of the property owner and developer. We are here this evening requesting your support for a rezoning from R1 to B2 on the just over 40-acre parcel off of 2790. This is to facilitate commercial development along the frontage of 2790, and then a 99 duplex lot development in accordance with our MDP. We have copies of that MDP project information. Happy to answer any questions. Andy Rodriguez is here with me as well. But it's a very, very straightforward request from R1 to B2 to allow both of those uses on the property.
And it gives a lot more flexibility in that front area. Motion for us to go ahead and act upon the recommendation.
I'll make a motion, we act upon this recommendation of the zoning commission.
Got a motion on the floor? Second? Second? Any further discussion on this?
I have a quick question. What types of commercial development are we looking at here along 2790?
So primarily neighborhood retail and medical offices, professional offices, so kind of a mix of things. We're going to be bringing in a lot of new residents, so be able to support those kind of commercials. Small restaurants, medical office, and professional offices is our target goal.
Thanks.
That is, some of those uses are listed.
Good. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, C, consider an act upon the request for proposals to develop a traffic impact analysis ordinance. You start on it, or you have it?
Yeah.
Okay. Come on up.
Yeah, Devin's here for moral support.
Yes, I'm here for moral support, but David does it all. He's gonna take it away.
Well, thank you. We talked with the representatives the other day from Kimley Horn about some issues that we're going to have as we develop more and more properties in the area. Right now, we do not have an ordinance that directs the developers to make improvements on the roads and the intersections adjacent to the properties they develop. And San Antonio has this, other cities, most other cities have this. It's important that we consider going out for bids to get an ordinance drawn up for us. Because developers, if they see we're sitting down here with no ordinance, and they jump in real quick and get all the approvals to build and develop, the roads may not be adequate to support the ingress and egress from these new communities. Also, intersections are a big deal. The ordinance would be written in such a way that they do surveys, they count the number of additional vehicles moving past certain points as intersections. They consider the turning areas and whatever. And if the new developments are going to increase this traffic to a certain degree based on the formula, I guess, then we can request request to require the developers to build these, to fix these, to improve these areas for us. So there's a lot of legal language, I guess, here. There are thresholds and different studies that we have to do. I'll let Devin jump in here and clean me up a little bit on my explanation, but we do need an ordinance, and we need expert help to help us drop this ordinance.
Yeah.
Help us out a little bit.
Beautifully put. You hit on all the notes. So yeah, a lot of what we talked about, I know some of us met, we had a little workshop about, some of the growing pains and what is the first next step. And some of that, when you see development starting to come, what your residents start to feel first is the pressures of traffic. And, all the municipalities surrounding San Antonio itself, all these smaller municipalities, usually what they're late to getting to is requiring a traffic impact analysis from these developers. So it's just a small portion of, allowing them to carry a little bit of their responsibility, not a huge burden on them. They're doing it all around. But what it does is it allows for them to carry some of the responsibility of their traffic impact. So based on, all of the stipulations will be outlined in the ordinance of what the city decides are thresholds and what's required. But essentially, overall, it would be if a developer has a certain impact, they would have to mitigate the intersections they're impacting within their roughly proportionate value. So I will answer any questions. That is the overview of everything. And I know David has some additional points as well, but yeah.
Who do you represent?
So I'm with Kimley Horn. We're not currently under contract at all. We've just been working with the city, advising them and on some next steps, but we're not under contract with anything right now.
Who would do the impact analysis, the traffic impact analysis? Is there a firm or a group?
Yeah, so when a development comes in, if it is a requirement of the city, the developer is required to pay for the analysis, and they will hire an engineering firm to do the analysis for them. Typically, the
And then
analysis.
They have to, they're, like you stated before, there'd be a little cost from the developers that come in to help pay for the roads,
To do the analysis.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of how the city of San Antonio does it. This is a very high level example, but you've got to, for the smallest level TIA, you've got to study within 1.5 miles of your site if that intersection carries more than 76 peak hour trips. That's talking about the AM or the PM peak hour. Once they analyze that at their build out year, say their build out year is 2025, if the impact to the intersection increases delay more than 20%, they have to provide improvements to the intersection, whether that be adding turn lanes or installing a traffic signal to mitigate it to get it back to that 20% threshold. All of that has to be within that roughly proportionate value. So if they can only do one turn lane within that value, that's all they would do. If they could do, everything that comes out of the city, they would do all of that. That's just one example of how it works. And those thresholds would be determined by the city when you set the ordinance.
Sam, did you have anything you were doing at the meeting?
Did you say you were Bernie and Dolphin study?
The latest to probably develop their own ordinance was Bernie. They had a TIA ordinance. They did a new update to it in 2019 is when it was finalized. They were the latest to kind of jump on that bandwagon.
Devin, how would this proposed ordinance help us with state roads? With 2790, 132, those are the main roads. Do we have any control over those? Or do we need to work that with the state to gain that benefit, or is that just city streets?
Yeah, so you would have to coordinate with TxDOT, of course. During the process, they would have to approve any improvements that are being proposed on the road. But in our experience, TxDOT rarely says no to improvements. They've got a lot on their plate as is. So typically they're not going to be on board. Nothing that comes out of the study is going to be reducing lanes or reducing throughput. It's always going to be, for the most part, adding. And so as long as it's in line with their plans or they don't have any other plans, they will always pretty much welcome, the installation of a traffic signal, the installation of turn lanes, any widening required. So, and they do that alongside with, Bernie, San Antonio, New Braunfels, all those municipalities as well.
Mayor, obviously, one of the biggest issues we've had where something like this would come in handy is the schools. I mean, the schools have a lot of traffic flow, and then once they put them in there and there's thousands of cars picking kids up and the roads are shut down. And that would be a tool, to actually develop where you could, as a school expands, there's already talk of expanding over there where they are. So we don't have any tools right now to use to protect us, not against the school, but to impact, to keep the quality of life in those neighborhoods, where people can drive down the streets.
I think that's the main thing, and thank you for doing the meeting, and Charles, thank you for bringing it up for us to go ahead and take a look at that particular area. But honestly, in our meeting, that's what all of us got out of that, is being able to have the tools that are available for us to be able to manage and at least get an extra look, right? Get an extra look, be able to figure out what we need to do. So this is for us to be able to have, or to come up with an ordinance that we will get help with in order for us to be able to manage that portion. And some places are going to get busier as we grow, so it's going to become even more. But it's all going to be based on the number of trips or the load on that, right?
Yes, correct. And that's all, there are methodologies that are proven and used across the country for determining number of trips based on the development and the size of the development.
So this,
One more thing though, sorry. Speak very briefly to the urgency of getting this ordinance in place with the development that's going on right now, as far as how far along they are and how this ordinance will impact already in progress and not quite in progress development.
Yeah, so once you develop an ordinance, you'll have to obviously talk amongst yourselves and set an effective timeline. That's going to be sometime in the future after the ordinance is developed. So already you're looking at a little leeway before it's developed. I know you've already got plats in, you've got building permits that are pending for approval. So some of those are a little too late to, hit them with that, but we can see the trends based on everyone requesting building permits, some rezoning and all these things, that growth is still coming. You're not missing out just because you maybe missed the first few developments to come in town. There's definitely gonna be more to come, and you want to get on top of that growth for sure.
I've got a question there. Devin, how would this help us with our railroad crossings? Because all the development is over here. To get to the schools, you've got to cross the road.
You mean when it's closed because of train crossing, or?
Well, that, just the width of the crossing itself, what type of cooperation can we expect from the railroad in making these improvements that you're envisioning?
That would involve a whole nother level of coordination with the railroad. So with the studies, you'll typically, like I said with San Antonio, you'll set a length of the study area to be, 1.5 miles. So if they're kind of far on the other side of 35, they may not hit that 1.5 miles, they may not get quite over to the railroad tracks. And that's also depending on which way you think their trips are going to be going. So from that standpoint, if they're that far out, they probably won't have a lot of coordination with the railroad. If you do have any developments adjacent to the railroad and you are requesting the roadway to be widened or anything, at that time, you just have to pull in the railroad and coordinate with them.
So I move that we go out for requests for proposals to develop a traffic impact analysis ordinance.
a motion on the floor. I'll say a second. Okay, say a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries forward. Thanks so much, Deb. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Once again, thanks for your consideration, having that. All right, D, consider and act upon advertising for requests of qualified engineering firms to perform a review and diagnostic of the code of ordinance and policies. Alderman Kate.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that this was another matter that was covered in y'all's workshop last week. I think Devin had the opportunity to kind of brief everyone what I was able to talk with her and Amy about previously. Devin, if you want to run that through again real quick for the folks here tonight.
This is the last you'll hear of me. Yeah, so another thing we've been talking about is looking at your code more holistically. Just with all the growth coming, where are the holes at, where are the things that need to start being improved upon, updated, just some outdated information, and start getting ahead of that. So talked about best, updating a code. That's a big endeavor. It can take a really long time, years. It costly. So we talked about just doing a holistic review of the code and figuring out what are the biggest priorities. So I think we already called out the TIA ordinance being one of them, and coming up with the needs assessment of things like that. Is it the zoning that needs to come next? Is it the plating procedure? Is it your subdivision code? So just doing a holistic review of the code to figure out where you need to start kind of filling in holes in the meantime.
And of course, it stems from the concern that provided our infrastructure is not where it needs to be here in the next 2-3 years, that as a city, we're able to mitigate growth. Not that we necessarily want to prohibit it, but that it's controlled and that we're able to protect ourselves in the event that, hey, there are construction delays or whatever COVID 3.0 comes around or whatever deal with that is. But Mayor, I'd like to move that we advertise for RFQs from engineering firms to perform a review and diagnostic of the code of ordinances and policies.
A motion,
I'll second.
a second. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, E. Consider an act upon the request for variance for height of gas stations sign off of I-35 and FM 3175. Big three signs.
Okay, last meeting, we had this on the agenda, and they were told that they needed to go to TxDOT. Well, they went to TxDOT, and TxDOT gave approval, but they asked them to come back to us. So,
Would there be any reason that they couldn't, other than TxDOT, have a variance in the sign height?
Excuse me, Jerry, what TxDOT told us is it's going to be an on-premise sign, that the regulation will be left up to the city on the height.
I go ahead and,
Well, we don't, do you know what height they're asking for?
oh, okay.
7,000 feet.
So where do we go from here?
They're,
Just
they had said,
ask, grant them a variance.
Wasn't it-
Just when,
like more than 50 feet
oh,
above
yes,
what?
they wanted 85 to 80 feet. And I don't know.
Right now,
how-
it's 35 feet.
Okay.
Right.
that's what I was asking, would there be any reason that they couldn't go up?
Josie, did they give you a specific how much the height is?
That's what we just said, about 85 feet.
And I don't, Mayor, I don't know what the height of HEB sign is. I mean, it's,
What's the highest that we've ever,
Well, I don't think we've ever put a limit on it.
I don't
To my knowledge, I've never heard the council put a limit on it. They just granted the variance for them to put their sign up.
There should be a standard size like what Love's and those have. I mean, I don't know what it is though.
But they're asking for 85 feet is what I remember,
In the past,
which
it was
is
always
50 feet
TxDOT.
more than. Well, no, actually, we granted variances along 35. The one thing, the one over where the Days Inn
just
was,
so you answered, TxDOT did review it and
they approved it.
yeah, so they approved it. It's basically now,
It's back on our plate.
they asked, for a variance, for 75 to 80 feet freestanding sign.
You tell me.
Do we have an artist conception of what that's gonna look like? I mean, we're gonna be able to see it from a cost or,
As you can see, HEB halfway to the cost.
I mean, that's my concern is that somebody's, you got this sign glowing in the middle of the night, people all around, it's like a speaker, it's a lighthouse. I get it, it's out on the highway, they're trying to draw people in, but at the same time, to me, that's a bit of light pollution. People living out in the country, they don't want to see some towering monstrosity of a sign, so that's my concern. It's like, I want to be able to know what it's gonna look like before we grant
They
variance.
haven't sent anything like that. I don't know what they sent to TxDOT. Do you, Tom?
Then the council could ask them to go ahead and send a picture.
Artist rendering.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about 7-Eleven sign? I mean, because they're gonna have a comparable sign, no doubt. Do we have any?
They haven't approached us yet.
Well, they kept
Should be
the
on their
old sign that was.
Yeah,
that old
days
sign's
in,
pretty-
And they took
pretty
the
tall.
top off.
So they're gonna be adding
So I would
to it.
imagine that they're gonna,
Pretty tall.
It's gonna be probably the same as, probably.
How
pretty
big
average.
That is, man. You have an idea?
I bet it's gonna be pretty close to what they're asking for.
That's what my guess is, because 10,
The only thing is, in that area where this sign is gonna go, it's a lot higher than the down. The days in is at a lower level than the 3175. In the sense of the height. So,
What do you think Love is?
I don't know. I mean, all those pretty much have, TxDOT's only gonna approve them so high. I mean, TxDOT gonna let you put a, 500 feet sign up. So that's what I would just try to get with TxDOT and ask them, hey, what do y'all normally do? If they say, hey, 75 is standard across the state on a big convenience store.
they've already approved it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
You're basically saying how the city says it, that we will allow, they'll allow.
council, do you guys want to see a rendition of what they're proposing?
I'd like to see the sign.
You wanna,
You want to table it?
Yeah.
Okay, make a motion to table it?
I'll move that we table this until we can see an artist rendering of what the signs will look like there.
Got a motion on the floor?
Second.
Second? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, got it. So Josie, if you can reach out to them and we can go ahead and schedule them for the next one. All right, consider an act upon the contract for emergency management plan with Nora.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank the fire department for all their hard work. It has been a crazy season, and I know we're very grateful for all that they've done for us. We're here, I just want to remind the council, we're not here to approve the writing of the emergency plan. That was done months ago by council, so this is strictly to approve the contract. Because of that, we've gone ahead and accepted all of the notes that were provided by Tom Cade, with the exception of the time frame. We'll be keeping 6-month time frame. So if you have any questions, we can go over that.
I got a couple of issues when we get to that point.
So the changes that were in there, the proposed changes
Were implemented, yes, with the exception of the time frame.
of the timeframe?
Yeah, and then there was one that, let me see if I can find it. It was retaining 10% of the payment. My contractor said he could not find that, in the code, so he did not include that. So that was the only other thing. Everything else, yes, was included.
Well, and I'll just respond to that.
Yes, sir.
The reason that we kept it in there was because it was in her initial proposal, 10% retained. That's what we kept.
Okay,
So it wasn't anything in law, it was what she proposed to initially.
Okay, so everything pretty much except for the timetable, is that?
yes, sir.
There you go. I've got a copy of the contract. Mary, you were asking about that, last time.
I did have it as part
I
of the
think she gave us
packet.
copies.
I had it as part of the packet. It's 4F.
Okay, well, I got it at 1:30 this afternoon, so I didn't know.
Oh, well, no, I didn't have I provided the one from before.
Previous.
Right.
No, this is.
No, I don't have the one with the changes.
Yeah. And also, I have minutes from when you all last discussed this back in March about whether or not this is going to. That's my big news now. I've highlighted that for you too. And that is the contract.
Maura, what's on this disagreement on the time limit, the time frame?
So I
Who
put
was
it,
wanting what?
he's wanting it much shorter than the 6 months, but I have a full-time job, and this takes a lot of coordination.
Okay.
You know, I would
just
be
didn't know
working
who
with
was
Union
asking.
Pacific with, yeah, that's something that, the city attorney wanted.
Well, David, if you look at the minutes in last meeting, her projection was 8 to 12 weeks.
No, it wasn't. It's
That
always
was
been
in
6
March of
months.
21.
Yeah.
It's always been 6 months.
I don't know how they got that in the
Yeah,
minutes.
so that wasn't this print.
8 to 12 weeks to draw them.
To drop the plan.
So, yes, this was, but I will tell you that when the minutes came up for my review, I provided the feedback to Josie to correct the minutes. So that was mentioned to Josie to get that updated.
Apparently they weren't correct, because that's what's on the website right now.
That was, yeah, I
I
provided
have,
that.
I have to go back and double check
And then
that.
also, I want to point out to the council that you currently have, you do have an agreement with Atascosa County. That was signed back in 1988. And we've got, according to the terms of that agreement, you've got to give them 90 days notice that you're going to get out of that agreement. And this has been, when Matt Deere said that he didn't know about this, I looked in the code of ordinances, and this is actually in the code of ordinances.
So we wouldn't actually be getting out of that. We would just simply be providing our own in addition to that.
So we'd have 2 emergency management plans.
Yeah, so we would have a local one and then a county one. Yeah, so most cities have their own city plan and then they fall under whatever county. Of course, San Antonio, Bear County, Comal with, Broncos, things like that.
And then the county kind of falls under the state.
Correct, yes. So we all mirror each other and work together, but it is important, especially seeing as how the city of Lytle is in 3 different counties. If something were to happen, I mean, at the school, we find it challenging, like, do we call Medina County or Atascosa County? We have something going on. Our campus is in 2 different counties, so it's really important to have something that we can all kind of do together. And then if we remember back to COVID, the county provided, vaccines and things like that, but we had to go all the way to Irvington to get those. Well, I remember sitting in on an emergency management meeting, and it's just not possible for some of our elderly folks to get there and things like that. And so if we had our own, we could have provided something here locally for our own folks, which was all part of what the state was rolling out.
I know that the mayor last time he mentioned that one of the things that we were concerned about was transportation, but, this is what I headed out to last is the annexes that the state recommends. They're different, like the one I talked about, there's basic intermediary plan and then an advanced plan. And if you'll turn in the proposed contract that Kenora has, page 3, B4, and then I will get to all the requests that I put in the email more. We're actually not yet, but it's all something we can fix. But under B4, your annexes, and that's why I handed this out, A, B, C, E, I, M, N, O, Q, and B. This last handout will tell you what the actual annexes are. And I know that the mayor talked about transportation, which is Annex S, that's not included in the proposed plan.
Not for the basic plan.
Yeah, not the basic plan.
But wouldn't the transportation be addressed as part of anything that was happening with the shelter and the mass casualty?
I mean, yes, that would be discussed, but as far as setting up, like, if we had VIA setting up contracts with them, that would kind of be something different. We would have to focus on that, so yeah.
So it would be, once again, what I was asking for based on the proposal that we had was for us to be able to identify how we had these agreements set up in order for us to be able to transport. So depending on the scenario that we actually had, then we would need to include that in there.
Yes, yes.
And that's basically what it is.
Well, if you want to keep on going, this does not include, the proposed plan does not include firefighting. It does not include law enforcement. It does not include health and medical services. I just want you to know what you're going to agree to, because then you're going to need something else for these other annexes that are being omitted.
So this is very standard. Most cities, especially the ones around here, my time at ACOG, I was actually over all of the cities and the plans that they turned in. Most cities just have the basic plan. Lacoste, Castroville, Divine, Natalia, they all just have basic So it's not, that's not something we would be doing until further down the road. We definitely want to get ourselves a standard. That doesn't mean we don't have firefighting or law enforcement, obviously.
They're just included as part of
Yes. Yes,
It does not include recovery, it does not include public works and engineering. It does not include utilities.
again, that does not mean that it's not touched. I just want you to fully understand.
That's the way I understand it. It's included, it's embedded inside those other categories. We
But
looked at,
these annexes that they're talking about, Mayor, I mean, they specifically talk about those issues, all of the issues that these topics include firefighting, law enforcement, public works, and engineering. I mean, you can, yeah, I suppose that you can just briefly touch on that in all of these annexes. But if you have an annex for public works and engineering, that's what it's going to cover.
Correct. So starting with a basic plan will be much better than what we have now, because we don't have anything. We are tied with the county, and so we're having to rely on them for anything. So getting started on this is definitely gonna be our first step. That's what we're
so
gonna do.
let me ask the question. So say for instance in Q, hazardous materials and oil spill response.
Yes, sir.
Are we saying that the fire department will be?
Yeah, they're responsible for that. And then, of
That
course,
would be included in there, right?
yes, and then they would reach out to Bear County's hazmat if they needed
An
to.
evacuation, an E in there, we wouldn't mention anything about transportation?
Yes, sir, we would.
We would, right? So some of these things that are in here would actually be mentioned in there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, sorry, yes.
Okay. So I think there's different ways that you can look at it. And depending on how significant you're gonna go ahead and create the plan, you could actually get into more detail if you needed to. But the basic stuff that we're actually looking at in the scenarios that we talked about, based on the hazards, we talked about train derailment or anything that would fall into that category. It would include all the different agreements that goes along with that. Now, the basic plan would also include the relationship, or actually establishing the relationship with these agencies. Is that correct?
Yes, and so like our train derailment we had years ago, that was David Persitka, the previous emergency manager, that was his very first day on the job. And because I interned with him, like I got to know these things. He was sitting getting a haircut when he got the call. And he showed up, he had no idea what he was doing. Of course, it was his first day. He didn't have connections prior to, like I've been working with Union Pacific because I've been bringing safety presentations to the school district and their parents. So it's very important to have these already established so that we can make these contacts when and if needed.
So that would be included in it.
Yes, sir, yes, yes.
Let me probe a little more on what the attorney was saying here. Once you finish what you're proposing here in the contract, and that's done and paid for, are you gonna come back then and say, okay, I'll write these other,
If that's something that the city wants, yes.
okay, and then the question is, do you need them?
So that's a matter of what the council decides. So when you get into the intermediate and the advanced, then comes a lot of strings with the state. Like you're mandated then to renew this or update it every, I think it's 3 years, something like that. Whereas your basic plan, you can sit on this. And of course, it's wise to review it at least annually and update it, as you go. But the further you get along, the more responsible you then are. And so you will be held more accountable with the state, which to me is not a bad thing when it comes to emergency management.
Yeah. So Dave, the initial discussion that came out with this one was, first of all, was through the emergency management team, and coming up and bringing it up to council to go ahead and do that. So that would be the stage, the initial stage, to go ahead and determine if there was anything else that we wanted to do, and then bring it up to the council for approval.
More, how responsible are we gonna be under the basic plan?
We just would have to let ACOG know, we send it to them, and then they work with the state. So they're gonna keep on file, we would send them all of our annexes, they keep all of that, and then we would just be working through them.
Now, do we send it to ACOG or we send it to TDN?
We would be sending it, well, we could send it to both. I would personally send it to both. And I'll be working closely with our TDN representative. But yeah, ACOG will house the contract.
Does TDM have to approve our basic plan?
I don't know that for sure. I'd have to find out. But I would assume that they'll review it, for sure. And I assume, yes,
Yeah, Tatum would need
they'll
to.
approve it, yeah.
So what will it cost, us to get these additional annexes that have been mentioned worked into our plan now? And I guess this is a two-part thing. Well, you can answer that, and I got one more question, in regards to this contract.
So the 20,000 would be just for the basic plan, and then,
20, I thought it was 10.
oh, was it 10? Sorry, my bad, yes, 10. No, I'm just dreaming, don't worry about me. Whatever the contract says. That is just for the basic plan, and then once we decide, if we decide to go further, I mean, that's gonna be like a year down the road, I would think. We're not gonna jump right into it. We need to, it's gonna take time to get this approved, and then we're gonna meet with TDM and say, hey, for us, do you recommend? And then I would talk with counties or cities that are similar to our size. But again, we have to keep in mind, just like what's been discussed many times tonight, the growth of our city is gonna hit us quickly. And so it's better to be prepared ahead of time than kind of behind the curve.
If you finish the plan, then you submit it for approval to these agencies you mentioned. If they come back and they say, looks good except for these three things,
Then
do
we
you
would
fix
just,
those for us under the contract?
oh yeah, that would all be part of this.
Okay.
And then as far as cost for the further, I don't know, Charles, that would have to be worked out later.
And then, I guess, the more I look at this, the more questions I have, that goes for everything in life. But exhibit C-1 statement of work talks about how we'll be working with Atascosa County regularly to merit the plan that they have. And I know earlier you mentioned, of course, the fact we're in 3 counties.
Mhm.
What coordination is going to be taking place with Barrett County and Medina County to incorporate county-specific needs? Because you touched on how the school's located in 2 counties. So how you propose that we work that into the plan as well?
So the reason I focus on Atascosa is because currently how it stands, we fall under the Atascosa plan. We do not fall under Medina County. Now, clearly, I would work with Medina County. I know all the guys. I know the guys from Bear County, so I would probably talk with them, but it wouldn't be near as much as talking with Atascosa and then, of course, Medina County.
Okay, yeah, and then of course, my final question on this matter is, plan is only as good as our ability to execute it.
True.
So we get this plan in place, right, and we cover whatever is gonna be covered under this basic plan. How often are we gonna need to be practicing these things, running through scenarios or tabletop exercises in order to ensure that whenever something does happen, that we can take care of, because on paper, it's all great, but if you're having to flip through 500 pages, right, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good, so.
So that is what I love to do, that, like the education side of things. This is like you said, this is what we have to do. Doing tabletops and things like that, you can bring, ACOG is a very good resource because they're for all of the counties here that surround Bear County. They provide ways to exercise. They actually give people that come down and will do these with you, so you could do it with the council. Those are all things that, yes, that really excite me. I'm excited to do those kinds of things, but that's not, that's not gonna be me necessarily, because that's not part of my job, right now, and I don't work for the city, but I can help facilitate. I can, provide you guys resources.
Well, Matt has been helpful too with linking this up.
Right, yes,
A few
very much.
things to look at different scenarios, so
Yeah.
it'd be tied in. That's where the
But
plan.
I
would actually-
recommend it. I do highly recommend it. And then it's always good, this is something that I've learned over the years, piggyback off of what's happened to other people. As sad as their situation is, that's a really good time for you to realize, okay, well, this, thank goodness, didn't happen to us, and I'm really sorry it happened to them, but what can we learn from this? How can we keep from having something like this happen, So, yeah.
And what problem areas do you identify for Lidle right now?
Always flooding is the number one for this area. We occasionally get severe storms. This is the first year I've seen fires the way that I've seen them. but they're always one of the top priorities for our area. Because we have the train here, I think that definitely is gonna be a priority. Not necessarily just for derailments, but if anything were to ever leak within the train, you know, they carry, Union Pacific told me specifically, they carry a lot of really, really bad stuff, through our town. So, I would say those are our top priorities.
Our agreement with, I was supposed to, Dukes and 1988, do they have a more current plan than the one we're signed on with?
I can't speak for them, but I would hope that they do, but I will tell you, David Persipka, he was not an emergency manager before he went on, he was a fire guy, but if you know, you'll learn fire guys especially make the best emergency managers because they're already trained to do a lot of those things. Our current emergency manager, is also the fire chief, so his priority isn't necessarily going to be emergency management. Again, though, it's all kind of all encompassed.
So you don't know if they have an updated.
I don't, but I can find out very soon.
Map now?
I can tell you they do not. Their plan is probably every bit of 15-ish years old. The names on them have just changed. I physically saw them when I went over there to talk with the current EM guy, and they are in 3-ring binders that have dust on them.
I was gonna say the 90s.
They will be, I've talked to the EM guy, they're rewriting their entire plan, and he said he would be more than happy to give us their plan if we wanted to adopt it.
Well, we gotta get everything lined up.
I'm just telling you what he told me. He said he'd be more than willing to help us any way he
This will be
can.
an ongoing thing, once they get theirs updated, and we get
Yeah.
ours, and we'll make a mesh there.
Correct, yes. And that's part of, in the emergency management world, they're always running a mile a minute,
Mm.
but it's real important to, when you have updates, to share those with the right folks.
Traditionally, Kamar, it's every 5 years when you update.
It
something like
depends,
this.
yes, it depends on the plan. Some are every 3 and some are every 5.
A copy of the Atascosa County plan that I have was dated July the 3rd of 2012.
Well,
It's a little bit more recent, yeah.
and
10 years, almost. Any other questions?
So,
I know it's a lot, but it is a lot.
So we could have two emergency management with the county and.
So it's an automatic, just, we currently are with Atascosa, but we also are with the state. So anytime it gets too large for Atascosa, that's when they call on the state. So when something is too big for the city of Lidle, once we have a plan, we would call on the counties to assist, and then it would go to the
so
city.
that would be included in the plan.
Yes, sir.
That's basically, that's what you put on there. So,
Doesn't our plan have to be approved by the county? Doesn't the county judge have to approve our plan?
He may, but he's very, well, we
it
just switched
still
to new
needs to be
one.
routed. Everything needs
Yeah.
to be routed and it ends up going to TC, up to Texas to
Yeah.
TDA.
But it does have to go through the county.
Yes.
So they have to approve our county, our plan, and then we send it up to TDM.
That's correct. That's correct. So,
you be with us through all those
Yes,
hurdles.
sir. Yes, sir. And if the approval process, ends up being more than the 6 months, yeah, I'm more than happy to just ride along with that, that's fine.
Well, I move that we accept the contract and get the ball rolling on this emergency management. Okay.
got a motion on the floor.
I'll go ahead and second.
Got a second, let's proceed. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. So 1A?
Sam, you voted for?
Okay, so 3, 4, 1A. Motion passes.
Oh, Mayor, also there are some other things that were left out in the contract we didn't get to notice, so. It's prompt payment statute, we didn't put the name of our contact person in there. By statute, that's city secretary, she's supposed to make sure that the contracts are executed diligently. So we need to still, there's typos in there that we need to correct. But there's nothing of any, just other than what I talked about, the Texas payment statute, we need to do that. That's a payment when it's approved by the city council. The contact
Were
person,
those, Tom, were those corrections that you had provided before?
I got this at 1:30, man.
No, but I'm saying from the previous time. From the previous,
No, these are the corrections that I made on her draft at 1:30.
Oh, well,
but I'm
but
saying
you
are
already
they
had it
from the
before,
previous?
yeah.
Me saying that they needed to comply, or we're going to comply with prompt payment statute, yes, that was in there.
Okay,
Me
from the
saying that we needed to retain the 10% retainage that they had put in their first proposed contract, I wanted to keep that in there. So that's what I said, you know, and after all of the work is finished and we fully accepted, then we would keep 10% retainage. And again, that was based upon their initial offer.
From the
So
original. So Dave, do you want to amend that motion based
Okay.
on the changes on the contract?
I amend the motion to accept the changes.
As long as you don't touch the timeline, I'm good.
Okay,
I think if they accepted that, you got 6 months.
Yeah.
so amended that we make the changes to the contract as mentioned and should,
Yeah, contingent on the changes that were described. You don't have any problems with what? Okay, able to do that.
And I'll go ahead and agree to that.
I'll go ahead with that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put it back out there. All those in favor
For with the changes.
with the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so go ahead and do it based on making the changes.
And when you're done with the corrections, sir, would you mind just emailing it back to you? Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Okay, let's keep going on. G, consider an act upon the request from the Savalas for an extension on building permit due to COVID.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'd like to explain the project we have under this building. And we have all the project on the plumbing, according to the city requirements, all the project and electricity, underground connections, electrical underground. We have done the underground connected with the septic systems. And the only, we have to continue is with the handicap parking lot and the final, the whole building. We do the deck and the ramp. And also we're trying to explain, because we do some upgrades inside, we do bright walls and paint, so it looks better and everything. And on top of that, it's very hard to hiring master plumbing and electrical plumbing these days. That's why we're asking for another extension. But on top of that, the COVID is sometimes it's hard to do all these plans. But the landscaping, we keep clean, it's very visible from the main road. And hopefully, our petition is for 6 months, not 6 months. Maybe it's gonna be extraordinary, but if not, at least 3 months, I think we can
Is
get
that
it
what you're
done.
asking for?
Yes,
3
sir.
months extension?
Yes, sir.
I go ahead and move that we give them 6 months, just to allow them 6 months
Yes, sir.
to do this for the extension.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for 6 months. Thank you, Jerry. Is that a second? Okay.
One question. They don't have to repay for the anymore. The price stays the same, right?
Yeah, Josie, and I was gonna ask you as part of the discussion, is there anything else that we need to take into consideration as part of the?
No, they just, their current permit expired on the 15th of this month, and they were quick to point it out to us and ask to be on the agenda. So,
Any other discussion?
yeah, I have a question. Is this for private residence or for business or what is it?
For business.
Business, it's gonna be offices.
Well, actually, there's 3 units in the building. One of the units is for administrative, it's a church.
Mhm.
And another unit is for a Christian store that we're looking to attach to the administrative. And the last unit, it will be for retail, for office or rental. So
Where is this located?
right here, 132, 14th Street.
Right up here on Main Street as you're coming into town.
Next to cabinets.
Where?
This is behind the, Cabinet Creations, the company, property,
Property right next to it.
it's very visible from the
So-
main street.
For clarification, so in 6 months, you're saying everything will be done?
Yes, sir.
Parking,
Yes, sir.
everything?
Yes. Because we have a, electrical approved, we have a connection, underground approved, we have a plumbing approved. So right now we work on the flooring and we're gonna paint it outside. All the cosmetics, we're trying to finish it, but,
Yeah, I was asking for 6 months because of the situation today. You know, and they want, if 3 months ended and they needed another month, they have to come back to the
Yeah.
city council, so
Did somebody
6
second your
months
motion?
seems like plenty of time to, you know, to do all this, and not have to worry about it.
Yes, that's correct. We appreciate that because that's what we first came to say to us for the 6 months. But in case it is not possible, well, the 3 months we have to, and work hard with the other people to come to do their jobs. So it's hard to get things.
Yeah, it's hard.
Hard on.
I had to move around my district.
They did a real good job on the walkway, by the way.
even the first time we hired the master plumbing, he was the previous to do everything, and when we call him, it's not possible with him because he's very busy. So we had to hire another one, master plumbing, so it takes us a month and a half, but, we have done it for the plumbing project.
Right now, with all the illness going on in San Antonio, it's hard to find.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like,
Very good. Please, the only thing I would say, just please work very closely with Josie and Skip as you start looking at the back part of it, you
Yes,
know,
sir.
with the drainage area back there, just making sure that we kind of keep that in consideration too. But, any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much. We don't have to do this.
All right, there you go. Let's go ahead and continue on. H, consider an act upon request from St. Andrew's Catholic Church on building permit. Claudio,
Yes, sir.
how you doing, sir?
Good, working late, we're short-handed. But I asked for an extension last time I was here, you know, it just, you know, our church is low right now, so we don't have the donations coming in as we want for the funds. So with the funds that we had in the bank, we're just going to pay more towards the loan, so we can actually, maybe a couple more months, get it reloaded again, so we can start working on this property. When I was asking if we can extend it, I don't think we're gonna be able to have it done this year. Probably gonna go into next year too. I'd like to get a slab and the plumbing done, because like our bids, everybody now is doing every 15, 30 days, the price is changing because of materials. We don't know how it's doing right now.
So refresh our memory, so the permit, is it for the dialysis center?
Yes,
Is it-
the event
okay.
center, yes.
So for the dialysis center, and then you're gonna add to it, or is
We're
it?
gonna extend it, yes, we're gonna add to it. Right now, I think it's 4,200 square feet, so we're gonna be at 7,500 square feet. We had the roof done, but it was under the
Is that on the
insurance.
original permit?
Yes.
The-
Yeah, we have not done any work, but the roof
Yeah,
got
we
done
did.
because of the insurance covered roof.
Yeah, y'all have extended it before, but nobody's done anything on it. We didn't even have contractors come and register again. So
Well, They're held up on the fire
they
marshal
got held
side.
up.
We've not allowed any construction other than a beam, and we're gonna allow a slab and
Yeah.
The extension.
plumbing, that's it.
Yeah, it's got to go to next year too, like half of next year at least. This year, I'd like to try to get the slab and the plumbing done at least, with the money we have, get it dried in at least at that point, before the end of the year. I think we can do that, and with our other festival, because the church is getting bigger now, more people coming in, so we see more money coming in, but by then, it's gonna take another half of next year probably. to get done.
We're gonna have to get another one
Yeah.
for the bids.
You guys doing a little bit uncontracted and the stuff that needs to be contracted and some of it in-house, you guys?
Yeah, we'll be running the job, but everybody else, the master license, we have everybody in there coming in. We got the plumber ready, licensed, and Christians. Everybody else can be licensed and bonded. We have to because the archdiocese is really picky about that. You know,
So you're looking at like a year from now to next March? maybe?
Yes. Yes.
Would there be, Sam, would there be any drawbacks?
I don't know. Depends on the COVID and all that stuff. Yeah. Do you have all the contractors?
Yeah, right now we do. But like I say, prices are changing. Some of them have 15 days, some have 30 days.
So just to make sure, Mario, and council understands, what you're saying is, we want the permit to go a year, but we're gonna start here pretty soon.
Yes. And by next month, we should have we'll have to start slabbing the front. Piece that part, but then you can see them will work for a while, a couple more months. We'll get the beam and dry it in at least, that part that we want to try to do, the framing of it, at least by the end of the year. But everything inside, you know, the sprinkler system, electrical, all that other stuff that goes inside, HC, that's gonna probably be next year.
So basically, you're wanting us to extend the permit that y'all got,
The permit piece.
but for more than the 6 months that normal ones
Yes,
do.
if we can, yes.
One for like about a year and a half.
Yes, because it's just on funds, we're gonna take that.
Mario, the plans aren't changing, or the construction plans aren't changing from
No.
what?
Not at all.
Mayor, I'm moving that we extend the building permit for St. Andrews for 18 months.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. No, Mario.
Thank you.
Alright. Let's see. Yeah, you wanna just, we got 20 more minutes before we go break? Okay. Let's see how many we can go. Okay, alright, consider an act upon approving final plat for Bella Vista.
Okay, I did include some minutes from the meeting last Monday. This is a meeting where Brad Boyd's variance was also granted. This is the final plat for Bella Vista.
My name's Curtis Keller. I own the two lots that are covered by the Vista Bella plat, so I just was here to answer any questions, maybe.
I've also attached a copy of the letter from
From
Jeff
TRC.
Dahm that said everything was done in accordance with our code.
Do you have anything to any concern? The zoning pretty much said no problems at all, right?
Zoning had no problems once they saw Jeff's letter.
Second.
Yeah, second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. There you go, sir. Thank you for being, appreciate it.
I'll be talking to you.
Okay. All right, Jay, consider an act upon the request from Tate Dawson Engineers concerning the proposed offsite drainage easement to the south of Saddle Ridge Estates. How are you doing?
Good evening.
Little by little, getting emptier and emptier. Home stretch, here you go. Yes, sir.
Mayor, Council, thank you for your time. My name is Jim Welch with Tate Dawson Engineers, and just here to mainly answer any questions you have. The request in front of you right now for this item is for an off-site drainage easement on the property owned by the city, which is where the wastewater treatment plant is. We've worked with Jeff Dahm to identify a configuration that does not constrict or restrict the wastewater treatment plant area from future expansions, and in general wraps around the perimeter of the property. The intent of this drain is to take collected drainage stormwater from the Saddle Ridge subdivision and convey it around the city's property down to the 100-year floodplain, which is depicted on the exhibit. And I'd be happy to dive into the weeds, any details you'd like to know. On that drain, the design, it's an earthen channel, 2 feet deep. And we would propose to construct the channel, and then the HOA for the Saddle Ridge subdivision. If you wanted to go into that, we can take care of the maintenance of it to make sure it's
so Saturday just gonna have in HOA? Okay. James, what do you think about drainage? Well, it's gonna go into that area, so I just wanna make sure. Is there anything?
Tom, do we need an agreement drawn up with them?
Yeah, we also, we need to get, that either phrase, just, we can't just get these with, developers gonna have to pay for it.
Fully understood. I would describe tonight as kind of the first step in the process.
Yeah.
If conceptually we're okay with things, we'll gladly continue down the road. We can come back before you this time.
Just letter in here?
I don't believe I put it in there, but he's okay with it, I know.
Yeah. Our engineer reviewed it, I know he was, working with Carlos. Yes, sir. Yeah. So, he didn't like the way it was first drawn up.
No, he didn't like
Rick, right, he didn't like it.
Put it back in. Jack Reed.
How is this gonna impact folks, south of town? Because it's gonna drain into that 100-year floodplain, but there's a creek back there that, the prongs of the Atascosa, right, they converge south of Lyle on 3175. So my concern, of course, is, hey, you improve the drainage for Saddle Ridge, how's that gonna, potentially have an impact on folks outside of the city limits?
Right and downstream. Very good question. So with the design of Unit 1 and as we submit each unit, we'll continue to rehash it. But when you zoom out, it's not picked on an exhibit. With Unit 1, we built a large detention pond, which is closer to 35. That outfalls and hence the same tributary. And it was oversized to compensate for drainage. So at the end of the day, when the subdivision is built, the drainage will be designed per code to be at or below the peak runoffs of the design storm. So 5-year, 25-year, 100-year event, you'll see the same or less flow because of that detention pond that's incorporated.
Has this gone through Atascosa's flood management folks already?
This has not. We have only been talking with the city because it's the city's properties.
Based on what Charles is mentioning, because then it's gonna end up going down. I mean, is it something that we need to consider? Because this will end up going down into Atascosa, the rest of it.
So from a procedure standpoint, review and approve of the design, everything, it goes through the city's engineer from the detention design aspect. And then when you're thinking about the floodplain and downstream, if the detention is designed and reviewed and approved appropriately, it's at or less previously, or pre-development conditions. So there's not a requirement unless we're working within the floodplain that we have a floodplain reviewer review.
Got it.
Outside.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about Hurricane Harvey and how, they got that 50 inches out there dumped on Houston old fields, right? They weren't expecting that much. It wasn't designed for that much, and a lot of people got flooded out of their homes. So I'm trying to forecast, any potential problems because Saddle Ridge is the first, and then we got Rosewood and then Motto Farms all in that same area. So I know that they're being designed for what they're intended to do. What happens whenever Mother Nature doesn't agree with what we put in place. So
right.
And maybe that is something that we need to discuss with the county as far as improving just in this area, really widening those creeks where they do converge. That's my big concern.
What's the flooding right now? What's the effect that it has?
Well, we haven't got no rain in a year.
Yes, I'd love some flooding, please.
That was rain.
Give us floods.
Rain this weekend.
Yeah, the drainage that they're proposing, maybe it's a better deal than what we got right now, just
Well, theirs is.
Yeah, theirs is.
If I'm just hearing correctly, you said that it would have the same or less impact than it does now, the drainage that you're proposing.
Yes, sir. We go through and so it's in the city's ordinance. The drainage calculations are set intensity, so many inches per hour.
Yeah.
That rolls into a total calculation. But that's all based off of historical data and it's what the city incorporates. And that's what we use as the baseline for our calculations and models. And then that is what the city third-party engineer also holds us accountable to make sure we design per that criteria.
I guess as a fallback, you talk about detention ponds, right? You know, we got that land out there by the sewer plant to keep flow into the creek, right? Because this right here is not actually getting into the creek. It's terminated north. I'm just looking at the map right here.
Yeah,
So-
it gets to the floodplain. We're not proposing to get down into.
Yeah, it's not gonna
floodplain
directly
and
get in there. It's just gonna have earth out there to hopefully get absorbed into. Yeah.
Proposal is just to get this started. It still has to be approved by our engineers. They have to look at it. And,
Right.
And it's contingent on other than what we do tonight.
Right. As, you know, he was saying, we need to figure out, you know, who's gonna maintain it. If James wants, you know, strangers out there maintaining it, or they just want to be reimbursed for the maintenance cost. That'll be all included in the agreement.
We're not doing the agreement tonight. We're just further at a.
No. Is that correct? That's your
Yeah,
understanding?
we know that there's a lot of details.
May I go ahead and make a motion that we further it along to get it going, and then it'll be contingent on these others as they go along.
Okay, got a motion on the floor for us to go ahead and proceed.
I'll second
Have a second? Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Awesome.
Awesome.
Awesome. Let's see, we can do, we said that.
No, sir. No, we have not.
Let's go ahead and continue since we're already here. Okay, consider an act upon the approval of the street names for Saddle Bridge Estates Unit 1.
That should have read 3 and 4 according to Carlos. I was under the, Tom, do you recall us ever approving the street names for Unit 1?
I thought that we, on Saddle Ridge,
Yeah.
I knew there was a list of them, and I thought that they were,
I
whatever
didn't,
they wanted to pick was okay.
that's kind of what I thought. Don't believe we ever came back to the council and approved anything.
The time that they were mentioned was when they brought us the maps, and you had already laid out the streets.
Okay, so that was my mistake on the Unit 1, because I don't recall ever having done it for Unit 1, which, and like I told Carlos, you know, I thought that once that list was approved, nobody else has really come back and asked that each unit have the names approved. Am I right, Tom?
That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remembered.
You know, at the end of it, we're gonna have to pass an ordinance naming all the streets. So, you know, while we're in the working stages,
But the critical thing that happens at this point, from what I understand, with the names and getting this assigned, is because you guys start working with the post office too. Is that correct?
Yes.
You start assigning the streets and the addresses, and it starts getting things lined up.
911 is probably your prime, I mean,
Yeah.
that's your big deal right there.
And
So,
the master list that we've pulled from went through the 911 review process to make sure that it matched all that criteria. It's just, I think, the formality of, okay, we're ready to take this select group and apply it.
Yeah, and
These
these
names
names
here.
were submitted back in 2018.
I think the biggest deal is just our code talks about they're not conflicting or too close to another street name is all our code kind of.
yeah, and that's where
Yeah.
the post office comes in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm assuming no one.
Well, you know, they had trouble in the Grandburg, they had to rename
Yeah.
the streets out there because they conflicted with the
They were-
streets in Pleasanton.
Yeah.
But after they already had the signs up and people moved in. So I don't know
That's
how
why the
that
post
happened.
office comes into play with all that. They help us out too when it's within the vicinity, see if there's any kind of confusion that goes along with that. So,
I don't think we have any names. I do over there. I don't think it's the other names here in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have anything close to those.
okay. So,
Tom, since I've got Unit 1 on there, not 3 and 4 like they're saying you want, and because Unit 1 was never really done, how do we move forward? I mean, this list was already approved back.
yeah, the list was approved. have y'all already assigned, Carlos, have you assigned names to certain streets already?
Yes, sir.
So can you- Can you just get, have you presented that to Joseph already?
Yes, there's an email that went out that had a calendar
This is,
stuff like
this is included in y'all's packet.
And I included the approved list already.
So how soon do you need this? Can we come back with an ordinance of just approving all those street names?
Would that would probably be the
Just
easiest.
have it easier for you guys, that's not a problem.
That'd be all right. I mean, you guys got everything named. What's your timeline on it?
If anything, phase 6 is the next plat to be recorded within the next couple of weeks, that would.
Has zoning commission voted on phase 6 already?
It's been the final plat's been approved by Jeff already. so
Okay, but not by the zoning and
zoning
the
city
council?
Not yet.
Okay, we're waiting on that, okay.
You guys know Jeff is accepting that job, right?
Yeah, I already mentioned it to Carlos, and I already sent him the info for the new engineer as well.
If that would work, Mayor, I'd make that recommendation to the council. We just, have an ordinance adopting all these street names, and no one has a problem with it. That way we can just cover everything. Yeah.
All of them for all the phases.
When
We come back on the,
we come back on the 11th,
on the 11th?
is that,
No, that works.
Yeah, because y'all aren't gonna be approving the plat before then.
So you need a motion to table until the 11th?
we need to go ahead and table it.
I make this motion to table it, until we get the ordinance, right? Aaron? To get the ordinance.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any nays? Okay, so Tom, do you need anything from them? We should
I'll
be,
get a copy of the plat from Joseph, so.
Yeah, which should be in that, thing that I sent y'all Friday.
Okay, we'll just accept that, or attach that as an exhibit to the ordinance, just have covered.
okay, so we ready? Do we need to have, Tom, do we need to have them here for that? Unless you guys have a plan or something that we need to get approved, we can go ahead and take care of it. So you guys-
Yeah, 6 will have to be approved, on the 11th. It'll probably be going to the zoning on the 4th.
So we'll put them together.
Perfect.
Try to take care of that.
And-
We'll put you up on the top now since you.
No, I was comfortable when we were saying.
We'll take care of that. Okay. Alright. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Go ahead and table that until the 11th of April. And we'll put an ordinance in. All right, we got one more, right? Okay, and then after that, we'll go ahead and go on break. Okay, L, consider and act upon a TRC proposal for Saddle Ridge phases 2 and 5. Okay, so you got a letter in your packet, you should have a letter that TRC provided for us on there.
Did Jeff give you all this? Did you see that from him? Did he CC on you on that? On the price for 2 and 5?
I do not believe we got a copy of that.
You can go ahead on that one.
Okay.
I've got another one.
On here, yes.
Mayor, I move that we accept TRC's proposal for Saddle Ridge phases 2 and 5 with the cost not to exceed $15,245.
Okay, a motion on the floor? Got a second? Any further discussion on this?
A question about the new engineer, city engineer, is the communication like this one on Jeff, the transition projects, like, is that?
So they're together. Jeff's last day is gonna be on Friday. Okay? So right now they're still together, they're working everything out. The new engineer, I know I had in my information, but I can communicate this to make sure everybody. So, they're gonna go ahead and pass, make sure that they kind of have an idea of passing the baton. So it should be able to work out. The new guy, Scott, is actually from the San Antonio area. Okay? So, and the plan is, not in the immediate, but the plan is for TRC to open an office in San Antonio. So this is gonna be very beneficial for all of us, okay? For you guys, for us. So we'll have somebody a little bit closer. Don't know when that's gonna happen, but I talked to Mr. Bell, Craig Bell, and he pretty much said that that's what the plan is. So, so Scott is gonna get involved with it.
We might push Jeff to try to get us a letter on phase 6 before he leaves on Friday,
Okay.
since he's done all that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. That way we can get it to the zoning and council.
So you gonna talk to him, Josie, or?
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him and I'll copy you on it.
Okay. Are we good? Good. Anything else with that? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? There you go. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right, so let's see, we're at 7:58 right now. I think this, I don't think we have anybody, I think we're at a good time. Let's go ahead and take a break. So Josie, if we can go ahead and show us, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, 7:58. Okay? All right. Josie, now? Josie, do you need anything from me here? Get this out of
Oh, great, thank you.
One's very sure on, whether they're gonna bring it or not.
No.
I'm sorry.